Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Corr. I was expecting to be joined from Hungary's ZTE Stadium by the one and only Keith Jackson. The stadium looks a bit weird though, Keith.
Yeah. Welcome to my all expense spared gigs in a town that I'm not even going to try. I just butcher it. Zali eggs, Gerards or something like that. Basically, it's a one-horse town somewhere in Hungary, and I think the horse bolted some time ago. So this is where we're at. I'm afraid I was up at the stadium earlier. There's problems with the issues with the timings of the press conferences. The team are arriving. Belarus are going to arrive a little bit later for their training session tonight than we had anticipated, which meant, Dan, I was going to join you from the stand, but I was at risk of getting booted out by security after 15 minutes of training because they open the doors, or they allow cameras and etc. to watch the first 15 minutes of these sessions to get your pictures, to send a bit of video and all that. But after 15 minutes, they start doing the work, the serious work, the sort of set piece work and all that. So at the risk of being interrupted there, and I couldn't do it very well from a press conference while the press conference was going on. So I've bolted back to my digs, as you can see, salubrious. And Scott is down waiting for Belarus to come. Once we're done, I'm going to jump back down to the stadium for the arrival of Steve Clarke, which, by the way, will be an hour and 15 minutes later than we expected, or it was scheduled to be. And that's becoming quite a theme with Steve Clarke in Scotland. These pressers are getting later and later. But I'll be interested, because I'll certainly be asking Steve Clarke what he thinks about, the fact that this game has been brought here to this specific town, which is, it literally is the middle of nowhere. Dan, see, when I tell you, I don't know if I discussed this with you, but we got here yesterday, and we got here yesterday having a flight from Copenhagen, obviously Denmark, to arrive in Munich, obviously Germany, to then get a 55-minute turnaround to get another flight to Graz in Austria. And then we were left with, it was going to be something like an €800 Uber from Austria to Hungary. It was the only way again. So we ended up, a few of us kind of clubbed in, hired a car, and had a 2-hour road trip from Graz in Austria to this place in Hungary. It's mental. I've never known anything like it. 4 countries in one day. And look, the guys that are in charge of UEFA, Seferin and Infantino at FIFA, they seem to sidle up to dictators all over the world. And right now, one of their favourite guys is the extremely right-wing Hungarian president. I wonder if that's got anything to do with the fact that we're here. Bonkers, mate. Absolute bonkers. Having said all that, it might be mental, and it's certainly been, a bit of fun getting here and all this. But what is happening back home, Daniel? People are continuing to eat themselves. It's extraordinary. So after that journey last night, we then learned about Celtic sneaking out a statement under the wires or under the cover of darkness, somehow failing to put a name to this statement. And all they've seen, from my perspective here, what I'm looking at is they're gaslighting. They've now decided, having botched horribly the transfer window, they've now decided to gaslight their own supporters and alienate their own manager. It's extraordinary. So I'm sure that's probably going to be the main topic of conversation, even though I've travelled all this way for a match, by the way, of huge significance, because I'm taking it, if you're a Scottish football fan, the vast majority of us want to see Scotland get to a World Cup. But nobody's paying the slightest bit of attention to this, which is bonkers in itself. But that's the world we live in, Dan.
It certainly is. We've got comments coming in already. If you're watching at home, please get involved in the conversation if you want to let us know about Celtic's statement last night, and anything else Scotland-wise as well. We will talk about Belarus against Scotland a little bit later on, and of course the draw with Denmark. But as you say, Keith, I think Celtic's the best place for us to start. Marzuno sums it up quite nicely in the comments. He says, where to start? Briefing against Rodgers, Maeda fiasco, or that waste of paper last night. How did we become the banter club? It's actually quite impressive how Celtic have managed to find another way to make the transfer window look bad.
Well, there's that. They went and claimed the Rangers title, haven't they? The one thing Rangers could boast was that they were beyond, there was no comparison in terms of an ability to botch up your PR and, I think it was, statement o'clock, statement tennis, all this stuff. That statement from Celtic last night was one of the worst statements I've ever seen from a club that is so professionally run most of the time. I don't know what's going on over there. I don't know if there's something in the tap water, but this is almost impossible to fathom. Now, if you're a big club and Celtic consider themselves, and they are, to be a big club, it defies logic that you can make such basic, rudimentary PR mistakes. And if you were in charge of Celtic's PR, Dan, or if I was in charge, and somebody from the boardroom came down and said, "Look, it's a great idea for a statement." "Oh, do you? Right, okay. Yep, we need to obviously run it past you." "Okay, let me have a look." "Okay, give me that bit of paper, please." There, that's where we start with that. That goes in the bin. And don't be so stupid. If you want to have another go at that, have another go at it. Let me do it if you don't. Because I tell you what the statement says. The statement says, guys, we are so sorry. This is on us. It's our fault. Look, we could come up with 100 different excuses. We could try blaming the media. But the bottom line is, this is our fault. And we apologise for it profoundly and sincerely. And we hope the manager can stick with us. And we hope you guys can stick with us, because you deserve better than we've just given you. That's your statement.
Yeah.
But, how anybody looked at that from a PR perspective and said, that's a good idea, put that out, that'll win them back. Because what you've just said is, you've accused the Celtic fans of being over-expectant and naive to the point that, they're believing stories. And by the way, there wasn't a lot of that's disingenuous at best. All the names that I saw being linked with Celtic over the last few weeks, Celtic were in for them.
Aye.
There was truth in all of them. Maybe there was a few that slipped away that I don't know, I didn't see. But the vast majority was all absolutely vindicated, legitimate stories.
Yeah.
It was Celtic's fault that they couldn't get the deals done.
And when you mentioned gaslighting as well, Keith, I thought the line that particularly jumped out to me was the thing about, look, throwing money away on or getting involved in high-cost transfers, it's detrimental. Look at what's happened to other clubs. Celtic fans aren't expecting that. They just want the players that have gone to be replaced, at the very least.
I mean, honestly, that is the point of desperation when you're pandering to your supporters. By the way, you're not pandering. You think you're pandering, but you're antagonising them still further because you're saying, well, look at Rangers. Look, stop it. Stop the what about it. That's not the Celtic's board concern. All the Celtic fans, as you said, Dan, quite rightly, the Celtic fans are sitting there saying, you've sold Kyogo in January, you didn't replace him. You've sold Nicholas Kuhn in an unseemly rush at the start of the window. You had plenty of time. You didn't have one lined up. And by the end of the day, you hadn't properly replaced him. Jota injury, obviously. And then on the final day, you sell Adamida with no replacement before the window shuts. And then it's just a Hail Mary shot on Iheanacho to see if he's going to be anything like the player that he once was. It's amateur hour. I wonder where Brendan Rodgers' head is at. There is also this, supposed leak from inside the club claiming that Brendan Rodgers has been trying to engineer his way out. Now, somebody will need to explain that one to me. And I've tried to say on what basis and what substance was there to this story or this claim. What has Brendan Rodgers exactly done here, other than sit quietly waiting for you to sign some players that you didn't manage to get?
And he's actually Keith in press conference, I think anyway, been quite complimentary of the board. He's come out and said this board bleeds for the club, and
it's almost as if he's been, come on, guys, and trying to help them, and help them get to where they needed to be, and they just didn't want to get there. Now, I don't know. Maybe somebody somewhere believes that Brendan Rodgers was being difficult behind the scenes. Maybe Celtic said, we've got this one, we've got that one, or that one. Yeah, I don't want them. But that's not really being difficult. That's a manager who's trying to keep standards high, who's trying to replace the players that have left with players of at least equal quality and hopefully better quality. Because that's what moving the club forward is all about. I think this is incredible. I can't believe that Celtic have allowed themselves to get into this situation because they're experienced guys, the guys running this football club. And also, I'm really struggling to understand, Daniel, why they're getting themselves into such a state that they're making such blatant, obvious mistakes as that statement. Because, it's not as if they haven't been in this movie before. This is not a new thing where they've, mishandled a situation, a transfer window, whatever. There's a bit of unrest. Write it out. You've been here before. You're actually making things worse. You're pouring petrol on the fire here. And you don't need it because, do you know what? If I'm Celtic and I'm looking at it, I just say, look, everybody stay calm. There's a very high chance that Rangers will drop more points at home to at home to Hearts when the league gets back up and running, and that Celtic could extend the lead possibly to 9 points. And by that point, everything calms down. And yet Celtic, without playing any games, they've actually antagonised their supporters and got them even angrier than they were when the window shut. And that's quite some doing. I didn't think that'd be possible. But well done, Celtic. You've done it.
Hi. We've got plenty of comments coming in already. If you want to get involved, let me throw a few of them at you, Keith. To start with, actually, Rebel and Sean McMillan are both saying 1,000 words in that statement.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, no name on it either, which is really poor. But 1,000 words and not one mention of Brendan Rodgers.
By the way, the no name on it is absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Because it smacks of cowardice. Who sanctioned this? Who wrote it? Who felt this was a good move? I can only assume that Michael Nicholson, the invisible chief executive, must have had some part in it. He at the end of the day, he must have sanctioned that.
I had to, surely.
Sure, that cannot go out without the approval of the chief executive, surely. So why is the chief executive's name not on it? Why doesn't he have the courage to put his name to it? I found that an insult to the Celtic supporters, to be perfectly frank. And I've seen all sorts of, who knows if it's true or not, but all sorts of suggestions that it looks as if it was an AI job. I mean, it's extraordinary, Dan. If that's the case, I mean, I'm not saying that is the case, but it might be from the from the tone of it, from the mistakes, from the actual inability to read a room. You would think this has been written by a piece of software that has no understanding of the environment in which we operate and the levels of frustration and anger among the club support. A computer with no sense of feel for that might turn that out and think this is good, this works. Honestly, Daniel, I'm flabbergasted by it. I cannot believe the mess that Celtic are making of themselves right now. And
Rob,
the important thing is this season has just started. There's so much for Celtic to play for, but they've already blown the Champions League. It looks as if very much, because what you're hearing is that supporters are there's a campaign on now to not buy the packages for the Europa League games. Mm-hmm. So you've blown the Champions League. You could be playing in front of half-empty stadiums in the Europa League. You've managed to piss off your manager. You've managed to insult the support. It's almost as if, honestly, if I don't know, it's almost as if Andrew Kavanagh has somehow hacked into Celtic's database and kind of get his computer hackers to put this plan together, because Rangers couldn't have hoped for it better. And as I said the other day, Dan, when the transfer window was still open, Rangers were 6 points behind Celtic in the league and 6 points behind Hearts, let's not forget. But at that point, that felt big, a big 6 points. Right now, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't now, eh?
When the ball starts rolling again, although I will caveat that by saying I think Rangers are going to struggle against Hearts. But if Rangers were to beat Hearts, all of a sudden, they're back in Celtic's or on Celtic's shoulder. And that 6 points doesn't feel anywhere near the 6 points that it felt. I know that sounds daft.
No, I agree with you. Right?
The damage that Celtic had inflicted upon themselves, I'll be honest, it does feel very reminiscent to the Neil Lennon 10 in a row misadventure. Where Celtic managed to bring themselves down from the inside, and it feels very much like that. And how dare they, by the way, blame the mainstream media? It's just I think they're treating their fans with contempt, and that staggers me.
Yeah. Well, look at the comments that are coming in. More than agree with you. John says AI has more intelligence than to put that dire statement out. This one,
more emotional intelligence, not artificial intelligence.
Marzuno says Rodgers is quotes ripping the club apart. That is a disgrace, and I don't use that word lightly.
Wait a minute, is that a quote from the so-called source?
Rodgers I think that's from the leaked story.
From the story that suggested that Rodgers was trying to manipulate the situation in order to get himself out.
I think that was the headline on it, to be honest.
Wow.
But Paul Brady says any Celtic fan that was wondering whether to take up the Europa League package, I'm sure that statement is decided. It will be a no for a lot of them. This one here, Line and Lure says all they are concerned about is being ahead of Rangers. That's the number one priority, taking jabs at them to this day. Sugarman says Rodgers looked scunnered after the game at Ibrox, asked about Dahlberg and Ida. His answers and demeanour told the story. There's a couple of people though, Keith, that are kind of having a go at Brendan Rodgers. The coolest sibling says Rodgers wanted Casper and KT, combined 17 million in wages, no return for any of them, spent 30 million in transfers last year on Dross, made them worse players. Rodgers is destroying Celtic.
I think we've just found a leak.
I was going to say, that's from a P. Lawwell. No, I'm only kidding. He also says you're all naive if you can't. He says you're all naive. You can't see Rodgers' game. He's playing the fans against the board, so he walks before Christmas. The fans are on his side, and I'll just cut that short there.
By the way, that's appalling.
Aye, really bad. Aye. But I mean, look, we said it a minute ago. It's actually impressive how much they've managed to annoy the Celtic fans even more. I mean, remarkable.
Somebody please explain. I just don't get it. I cannot get my head around it, Dan. And it feels like almost like self-sabotage. And it
does. Aye.
And this is a club which, by the way, we laud them for it. How professionally they're run, how well they do their business, you know, how far they are in front of Rangers on the pitch, off the pitch. Please, somebody help me understand this. I can't get my head around it at all.
Marzuno also follows up saying all they had to do was say the recruitment department has failed. Sorry, a review in progress. I mean, that's all it would have taken.
Yeah.
People might not have been delighted with that, but it's certainly better. They'd even better say nothing than that last night.
Absolutely right. And you know what? Again, and we've had this over the road at Ibrox, where I said last week, Daniel, in the show that I felt Kevin Thelwell was obviously feeling the heat, and that prompted him to call in the Rangers media guys, and he sat and he gave an interview. You know, again, it was not Paxman-esque stuff. Obviously, it's an easy softball sort of a interview that he's done there. And I don't think that's good enough, but at least it was an attempt to communicate, to say something.
Yeah.
The reality was that all he was really saying is, I'm doing great. Russell Martin better get his finger out. So there's a lot of kind of people are feeling the heat. And that wasn't a great response from Thelwell, but it blows Celtic's response out the water.
At least they put a face and a name to it.
A couple of days ago, there was this suggestion that Michael Nicholson was going to do an interview with Sky. And I thought, well, that's better. If he does that, at least he's putting himself up for, you know, some potentially difficult questions there that he might find awkward, but at least he'd be brave enough to come out. And I think when I say brave enough, desperate enough, because Celtic have made such a mess of this that, you know, he would have to do something which he clearly doesn't enjoy. He doesn't want to be seen. He doesn't want to be front and centre of anything. I find that extraordinary in itself. You get a chief executive of a business the size of Celtic who just doesn't want to, he wants to fade into the background. That's not acceptable. Where's the leadership? And no wonder Celtic fans are boiling. No wonder they're boiling. I think it's extraordinary. And that was the final insult, of course, that not only did he not want to come out and front this up and take responsibility and take ownership and accountability, but they stuck out a statement, 1,000 words, no name, don't know who it was written by.
9 o'clock Saturday night.
Well, exactly. Bingo. The full set there.
And Sugarman in the comments says Brendan is awfully quiet. I know we need to talk about Scotland, obviously, but where does this leave Brendan Rodgers now?
Well, just so people understand, I'm sure most guys will have an understand, but from a journalistic perspective, the reason that Brendan's awfully quiet is that he's had no press duties. If Brendan, put it this way, if you had heard from Brendan Rodgers by now, it would have meant he'd gone rogue, and he had chosen to set up an interview with, whether it's a broadcaster or a newspaper, to say his piece. And officially, I know that would be Terminado too, if Brendan Rodgers went against the club to organise an interview to put out his own message, and whatever that message might have looked like. So that's why you haven't heard from Brendan Rodgers, and it's that reason and that reason alone. Brendan Rodgers will speak once the players are back at Lennoxtown, and once he's getting ready for the next game. Everything goes back to normal, and he will have his moment where he's stuck in a room at Lennoxtown with cameras in his face, microphones shoved under his nose, and he'll give his version. And that is going to be box office popcorn, because Brendan he's had plenty of time to think. He's a deep thinker. And I've said before, Daniel, he never says anything that he hasn't already kind of worked out in his head exactly what he wants to say and how he wants to say it. Yeah. Often in match day situations, there'll be a flash interview that pre-match with the broadcaster, the TV broadcaster, then the radio broadcaster. Then there's the aftermatch stuff, again, with the main broadcaster, the radio broadcaster, and then walks into the main press conference. Very rarely will Brendan Rodgers say anything in all of those interviews that veers off from a line that's already been predetermined in his own head. So he's had plenty of time to think about what he's going to say and how he's going to say it. And I just think it's going to be fascinating. I do think that is a man with a load on his mind. And I do believe that he has spent these last few days really weighing everything up, knowing full well that he made a promise to the Celtic support that he was going to see out the 3 years. And I think he's weighing things up right now. I genuinely do. And I think if he had managed to kind of square it off with himself, where he thought, well, do you know what? The window wasn't great. I'm really upset about it. I'm not going to stay beyond my 3 years, but let's go on, because I'd like to go out with, a real bang here and just motor on from now to the end of the season. I honestly think what's happened over the weekend might have given him cause to sit down and reflect on it again. They're pushing his buttons, Daniel, and that's extraordinary. I don't understand it.
Natalie,
it feels horrible. The optics are terrible. It actually feels like Celtic behind the scenes are in some sort of full-scale civil war, which is unbelievable.
No. Natalie in the comments, we haven't even talked about this actually. Dyson Maida wanting to leave Celtic in January. That's another thing Brendan Rodgers has got to deal with. His comments while away in Japan duty, saying that he wanted to leave, Celtic couldn't get a replacement. And also, just incidentally, we mentioned that Adam Media there. I don't know if you saw his comments last night after scoring for Ireland. He said that he wasn't looking to leave Celtic. Yeah. And Swansea come in and that was it. I mean, there's just so much for Rodgers to deal with when he gets back. I think he should enjoy the next few days he's got off, to be honest.
Well, and now, so where's your focus, right? I made the comparison to the 10 in a row season with Neil Lennon, right? Where's your focus now? Number one, your focus is on what does Brendan look and sound like the first time he speaks in a press conference situation. There's the first thing that's going to fascinate everybody. Second thing that's going to fascinate, what's his team look like? Is he sending out messages with his team selection? He's already bombed out players that have been given to him from his Europa League squad, which shows a level of dissatisfaction. So what's his first selection look like? And then once he's made it, what do the players within it look like? What does Dyson Maida look like? Does he look like the Dyson Maida whose head has been somewhere else since the start of this season? Does he continue to play like a player who no longer wishes to be there, like a prisoner? Or does he think, right, okay, well, that window's closed now. I've got a professional responsibility for my football club, for my teammates to get back to concentrating and being fully focused. That's a massive thing for Celtic. Because if they get the good version of Dyson Maeda, things will probably be okay so long as he doesn't get injured. But if they get this recent version, where his head is, he's checked out, and if he doesn't check back in again, then he's not going to be no much use to Celtic, I'm afraid, over the course of this campaign. Then they've got a massive problem because they somehow need to get to January. Honestly, so this is what I'm saying. When I made that comparison, I wasn't being flippant to the 10 in a row season, the Neil Lennon season. It feels remarkably similar, and that's why the reaction now, the next step, is going to be so interesting to study. And I think the only thing that Celtic can give them any comfort at all is that on that occasion, Steven Gerrard had been building over the period of time to get Rangers into a position that they were capable of capitalising on, the complacency that crept in and the self-harming that was going on across the city. Rangers were ready for that. I'm not sure that this Rangers are ready for that. So, that might give Celtic fans a little bit of comfort, but I actually don't think it will give them any comfort. Yep, I think they'll be happy if they can go on to win the league. Of course they will. Why wouldn't they? That's the whole point. But there are serious problems that they know now need to be addressed. And Daniel, Celtic fans can be very militant when they want to be. And I think we're about to enter a period of exactly that.
We should really, we could talk about this all night. I think maybe one last trip to the comments, because we've got so many of them coming in. It would be an injustice not to read them out. Ross says the way the Celtic board have handled this transfer window is nothing short of embarrassing. Acting like a Sunday League team, we need proper football men in charge of our club, not this board. This one, I'm so sorry, I'm having to read them through now because I'm worried what some of them are going to say. Nicholson went to Harvard University and Desmond has been called a high Q individual. What a relief then, everything is well and tidy. Green Machine says Maeda's work rate lets you know he's a top pro and will leave a top pro. No lying done for this guy. Tommy says, if BR speaks highly of the board, he's destroyed. If he slags the board, he's destroyed. There's no winning. And a couple of people, Keith, just to round it all off, Rebel is one, if I can find it, is asking, look, what's your thoughts? Will he see out the season, Brendan Rodgers? That's a tough question.
Well, it's a good question, though, isn't it? And it wouldn't have been a good question a couple of weeks ago. Of course, you'll see out the season. He's made his promise. There was no way he was ever walking back on that. He would never, having said what he said, having left the way he left the last time, there was just no real prospect at all that Brendan Rodgers wouldn't see out the 3 years. I actually had a strong feeling that he might commit and go more and go on for longer. And we talked about it previously, Daniel. If you felt that 10 in a row was coming back onto the horizon, if you got to 5, then you're looking at it going, wow, you just knock another couple of titles out and you're getting there. Yeah. And Brendan Rodgers was the guy that walked away from the opportunity to do that. And that's what caused the damage with the relationship. And I wondered if there was the possibility, and I genuinely believe at that time there was. And we're talking last season after the European campaign, when there were signs of clear progression, I thought Brendan Rodgers would be very comfortable at the prospect of having a conversation about where do we go next, guys. Yeah. Right now, that conversation doesn't take place. It's not going to take place. Brendan Rodgers will leave the club at the end of this season unless there's an incredible change of set of circumstances. I think he's done. Now, does he stay? Does he go until the end of the season? I think he's weighing up. I think he's got a lot to weigh up. I think it's no surprise that he hasn't quit at this point. I do think, even as I said, he might have resolved all that in his own head, and then the weekend happens, and he's back in a position now, wondering what is going on around me here. Personally, I think he will stay, but I don't think I would blame him, and I don't think any fair-minded Celtic fan would blame him if he decided, look, guys, I find this position absolutely intolerable. Who's this popped up?
We need to talk about Scotland, and just in time, the one and only Scott McDermott.
Daniel, you alright?
How's it going?
Aye, no bad. I just came on to show you some of us are actually grafting her here. Do you know what I mean?
Aye, that's good, mate, because we were starting to suspect it was otherwise.
Yeah, it's got that look like a toughie. What did you have to write? About 200 words in Belarus? Wow, what a shift, man. You're a hero.
About 350. It's quite long for me.
Basically a picture caption. Aye, well done, me, man. You put the work in.
It's the quality, Jacko. Quality it counts.
That's it. Well, look, before we talk about Belarus, obviously tomorrow night, huge game for Scotland. Should we mention Denmark? I mean, not a classic, but an amazing result out there in Copenhagen, Scott.
Oh, great result. I think most of us, and probably Steve Clark as well, would have bitten your hand off for a draw before the game. Daniel, me and Jacko actually spoke about this yesterday. I mean, he's so calculated and methodical, Steve Clark. We were saying almost before the campaign begins, you just know he would have sat down and looked at every game, every opposition team, and almost kind of mapped out, how he could see it going, how he could see the campaign going in terms of what was going to get us to the World Cup qualification. And I think probably part of that plan would have been to take at least a point in Denmark. Obviously, we'd have loved to have got 3, and there was a period in the second half where it looked as if Scotland were actually going to get a goal and maybe go and win it. But yeah. I think overall a draw was a bit fair, and I don't think anybody was complaining about getting a point away to Denmark. Just gives you that kind of solid foundation to build on. Obviously, they need to go and get 3 points here tomorrow night. That goes without saying. But if they can get away for the first international break, 4 points in the bag, 2 games at Hampden coming up, I think it'll be job done.
And look, it was a point we deserved. I mean, Keith, we're used to going away and sitting in. But as Scott says, there was a couple of chances. Lyndon Dykes had the big chance. Ben Doak had a sort of half chance when he came on. Sorry, Ben Gannon-Doak.
Mick Gannon-Doak.
Mick Gannon-Doak. But we deserved that point the other night, definitely.
100%. We deserved it. Could have got better. Probably deserved to get better with the better chances. And you know something that, and I have to do a mea culpa. I put my hands up. Scott, you'll need to do the same, mate. We saw the team sheet. The whole press room almost collapsed in disappointment. There were heads and hands. There were people shaking their heads, saying, "What's he done? What this feels the exact same as it felt before we played the Czech Republic in the opening game of Euro 2020/2021. The exact same feeling that we got before the game against Germany in Munich, where you're looking at the team sheet and you're thinking, what have you done? Why are you doing this? Why are you taking out the players that might be able to control the midfield? Why are you not playing the one guy that we've got that looks like he could grow into being, our version of Gareth Bale, a match winner at this level?" There were people, honestly, and there was actually a bit of anger in that room, I have to tell you, Daniel, with people thinking, right, this is it. If he blows this tonight, then, the gloves are coming off. And I've got to tell you, this is what I'm saying. We surely have to reach the point at some point. I know that Steve Clark has judged it wrongly on occasion, and in these 2 occasions in particular. And I remember the previous visit to Denmark, to Copenhagen to play against Denmark, when he picked a team presumably sitting in his office with 2 pencils stuck up each nostril and a pair of underpants in his head. I think it was Andy Robertson was playing right back. You looked at it and thought, that's an absolute mess. And we got what we deserved that night, which was a sound beating. So there have been instances of that. But more often than not, over these years, Steve Clark, where he's got it wrong, he's quickly put it right. He knows what he's doing, guys, and he knows it better than we know it. And there was a reason behind every decision that he made the other night. And do you know what I actually admire him, Daniel? I admire him because he knows that wasn't the easy choice. The easy choice was you play Billy Gilmour and you play Ben Doak. And then if it doesn't work, people say, oh, well, at least it's not the manager's fault. It's not on the manager. It was just Denmark were better. Whatever the feeling is. But he, by picking that team, put his head right up in the chopping block. He's basically saying, come and have a kick at me, but I'm making these decisions because I genuinely believe that this gives our team the best chance to get the result required against this particular opponent. That's brave. People don't like him for it, but you've got to admire him from it, even if it's grudgingly, even if it's through gritted teeth. He's making decisions, putting his own popularity, his own reputation on the line, because he firmly believes that by doing that, Scotland's chances of getting results increase and Scotland's chances of getting to a World Cup improve. And surely, guys, that's what everybody out there is crying out for. It's been so long. We just need to get there. Now, one point in Copenhagen, maybe some people out there, his critics, will look at it and say, well, if you'd been more adventurous, if you'd played Bendo, it could have been 3. I'm sure there will be people saying that. I'll take the point. I think most of us would have taken the point. I'll take another 3 tomorrow. Thank you very much. That'd be 4 points from 2. And then I'm going to look forward to Greece and Belarus, both at Hampden. And if we can beat the Greeks in game 3 of this group, having got to a position where we'll get 4 points from the first 2 games, then beat Greece at Hampden and beat Belarus, take 6 from 6 against them, what a position you're in going into the final round. And Steve Clarke might just pull this out of the fire for Scotland yet again. And by the way, become the first manager in our country's history to qualify for 3 tournaments. Never been done before.
It's a brilliant start.
And I think we've got a great chance.
Ultimately, Daniel, it's about the end result. If Scotland get to the World Cup, of course you'll look back at the start of this campaign and think Steve Clarke got it absolutely spot on. But see if you miss out on a couple of points or you're losing a playoff or whatever, as Jacko says, the Steve Clarke cynics will look back and think that Denmark game was there for the taking. If we'd have taken 3 points, because I didn't think Denmark were great. The other night, I have to be honest, they weren't as good as I expected. So people will look back if you don't make it and say that was your chance. And without wanting to be pessimistic, because I agree with just about everything Jacko says there. My only slight fear is that I think recently, maybe in the last maybe only in the last year or so, Scotland to me look a better team away from home than they are at home. And it slightly worries me, that Greece game at Hampden. I mean, as Jacko says, that's going to be absolutely crucial. If we get these 4 points in the bag, that next game is just going to be so important in terms of qualification. Certainly not to get beat. And our form at Hampden of late isn't great. I know there's a few friendlies thrown in there, but the record isn't great at Hampden. We almost need to kind of learn how to win there again. And look, maybe it will come just because the fact it is a World Cup qualifying campaign. Hopefully it'll have been a positive start. The Tartan Army, the fans will be right up for it again. The thoughts of going to America next summer. It's obviously this shortened qualification group, so it's really intense. But we need to learn to win at Hampden again and be a force. The way we were in the Euro 2024 qualifying campaign, we were beating Spain and the like. So that worries me slightly, because at the moment I think we look a safer bet away from home than we do at home.
I've said before, guys, that the comments that are sent in as the kind of heartbeat of the show, and we love getting comments in. I've got to be honest, see some of the comments that have come in the last few minutes on Steve Clarke. I'm absolutely stunned at them. Absolutely stunned. As a wee bit of me is thinking, I don't even want to read these, but guys, don't shoot the messenger. Let me throw a couple of them at you. This one here, Rebel says Steve Clarke has to remember he's not managing Kilmarnock anymore. Paul Brady says Clarke is too negative. AGSC Tech says problem with Clarke is he's a snakes and ladders manager. Drawn Denmark, they narrow defeat against Belarus. That's been the Clarke story. He says you can't trust Clarke. He does a tactical number against Denmark, great. Then what? Lyndon Dykes a false 9 against Belarus. Ali says we won't beat Belarus. Another snore draw. And also says Steve Clarke should have went for it. But sat back as usual. As soon as he's removed the better. Denmark, one of the weakest teams in years. I don't know about you guys, but I'm absolutely stunned. I thought it was a brilliant result the other night and a very good performance.
Yeah, well, look, let's deal with them kind of as we go there. I think one of the first one was, where's Billy Gilmore playing?
Yeah.
The answer to which is Napoli. And the second bit is then of the question is then kind of dealt with just by that answer alone. I think there are better players than him. Really? Okay. I don't know how many centre midfielders we've got that are playing Napoli and winning the Scudetto. So Billy Gilmore starts for me. I think that will allow him to play Scott McTominay in a position where we can get a lot more. Basically, the position that he's been, nominated for the Ballon d'Or by playing that position for Napoli. I know that must have frustrated it frustrated me and Scott sitting watching it. You're sitting watching Scott McTominay running 50 yards back the way to put tackles in and chase people, when you actually want Scott McTominay 50 yards the other way, getting at people, getting into the final third. And when he did get into the final third at the start of that second half, he created one brilliant chance for McGinn. And then a couple of minutes later, he slid past a couple of challenges and had a shot which Kasper Schmeichel saved with his boot. That's the Scott McTominay that you want to see in a Scotland shirt. And I think by putting Billy Gilmour in at the base of that team, it allows Scott McTominay to get further forward. I think you then maybe take Lyndon Dykes out of the team and you play McTominay just playing in, around and off the bat of Shea Adams. And I think you might take Christie out and allow McGannon's boy to have a real go down the right hand side. That's what I expect. But then again, what's the point in expecting or trying to second guess Steve Clarke, because we're almost always wrong, as was proven again the other night. But that's what I would expect. I think you'll see something far more predictable and far more about Scotland being in possession and being dominant, and with the sort of with the end game of trying to get at the Belarus defence, break them down, score goals. And I think your best chance of doing that is if you've got Scott McTominay a lot further up the pitch and Ben Doak on the right hand side, and Billy Gilmour controlling things and dominating the sort of central areas of midfield.
Scott, do you anticipate many changes to the team tomorrow night? I mean,
not many, Daniel. I mean, Steve Clarke, I think, said after the game that night that he always had it in his mind that he would make a few changes, which goes back to my initial point about how he'll have mapped out this whole.
He knew his team selection 3 weeks ago, Scotty, didn't he?
100%. So no, I think there'll be one or two changes. No, he's never been one for wholesale changes. I tend to agree with Jack. I think Doak will come in because he obviously gives you that threat. He goes past players. Belarus are going to sit in deep, I would imagine, in a low block. The 3 games that they've played at this stadium, obviously behind closed doors, this stadium in Hungary, they've picked up 3 draws. I think at least one of them was a 0-0. I think Northern Ireland drew here, so they're no easy to break down here, and I think that'll probably be their game plan again tomorrow night. So Scotland are going to need to be creative. As Jacko says, it's going to need McTominay further forward, because when you're struggling against a kind of low block defensive team, you need a midfielder to be arriving late in the box. That goes without saying, and there's nobody better in Europe than him, probably last season at doing that. So I think that will need to change. And Gilmour probably will come in just because Scotland are going to have loads of the ball. Steve Clarke will want to keep it moving and keep it moving quickly. I think Gilmour does that for you. That's no slight on Lewis Ferguson. I thought had a cracking game the other night, but more in a kind of destructive sense in terms of breaking up the Danes' play and putting tackles in and doing the kind of dirty stuff. It'll be a different game here tomorrow night. Scotland will be in possession a lot. They'll dominate the ball. You'd like to think they'll dominate the kind of territory and play most of the game in their half. It's just about how you break them down.
Do you not think, Scott? Do you not think, Scott, that Ferguson and Billy Gilmour could be the two sitting, and then it's almost you've almost playing a 4-2-3-1 with John McGinn left, Ben Doak right, McTominay through the centre, just playing in behind Shea Adams. I love that. I'm loving the sound of that, and I think that would be my team if I had any influence whatsoever on it, which obviously we don't.
But he might. I mean, he went with 2 up front the other night, Jack. And I suppose some people would argue, well, if they're going to go 2 up front away to Denmark, then
I think that was to get Scott. I think he explained it afterwards. He looked back on the previous defeat in Denmark and he realised we couldn't get out our own half. We were getting suffocated. We couldn't get out. So I think that was specifically designed. 2 big guys, get it forward early. Let big Lyndon Dykes get up, win his headers, which he must have won about 70% of them, by the way. Get the ball into Shea Adams, let him hold it. That was a plan specifically designed to enable us to get out. This is a very different game of football, and I think we'll have a very different approach to it.
One guy that we haven't mentioned that I just need, you were talking about mea culpas earlier on, Keith, Grant Hanley. See when the team come out, I don't know about you guys, but I was like, I can't believe Grant Hanley's playing again. Barely kicked a ball. 10 out of 10 the other night. Absolutely first class.
Excellent. And Steve Clarke has worked this out again, Dan. And some people don't like it, right? And I get it, and I get that familiarity breeds contempt where Steve Clark is concerned, or where Grant Hanley's concerned. But the bottom line is, Steve Clark knows he can hang his hat on Grant Hanley. He knows what he's going to get, and he got it again the other night, and he gets it time after time after time. Yes, there'll be a mistake. You're a Scotland central defender. You're going to come under pressure. There will be mistakes made along the way. But, you know, Steve Clark chooses to hang his managerial hat on Grant Hanley, and I've got no beef with that.
No, me neither now.
He also knew that game would be perfect for Grant Hanley. I mean, the ideal game for him. Denmark throwing balls into the box, throwing his body in front of everything, winning headers. Him and Suter actually together in games like that, knowing there's a bit of seeds ending, are actually really strong. Like you, Daniel, I think most people would have looked at the team sheet and thought, no, maybe better Suter and McKenna, a bit more balance. You know, McKenna's been playing in Zagreb. Obviously, Hanley's only had a couple of games for Hibs, but again, the manager got it right because Hanley was man of the match. Him and Suter actually were the two best Scotland players. So, no, he got it spot on.
Just before we wrap up, guys, the last comment, AJSC Tech simply says, win the next 3 games, lads, and you're iconic heroes forever. What's your predictions going into tomorrow night's game?
That mean Jacko's talking about?
I think he means the 3 of us, no?
I think I've went for 2-0 Scotland, Daniel. I'd like more goals, but we're not renowned, are we? You know, even against the kind of smaller nations for racking up goals. I think it's just important we win the game. Of course, obviously Greece getting 5 against Belarus the other night. We're going to try and get at least a couple to keep up with them goals wise. But no, I think 2-0 would be ample. I think that's what the score will be.
What's your thoughts, Keith?
I'm similar, but not the same. I'm going 3-1 Scotland. I think listen. Having said everything that I've said about the quality of player that Steve Clark's got at his disposal, if I didn't believe we could come over here and beat Belarus, then I'd be a complete and utter hypocrite. We've got the players to do this. We've got a manager that, whether you like him or whether you don't, whether he's Marmite or whether he's not, he knows what he's doing here, guys. And he's got a really talented group of players. We'll be fine. It won't be a breeze. We'll need to work hard. We'll need to do all the things correctly. We'll need to show the right attitude, but I'm confident we will, because 9 times out of 10 or more than that we do with Steve Clark and his players. So yeah, I think we'll need to work for it, but I think in the end our quality will come through and we'll win by a couple of goals. So 3-1.
That's great, guys, but it's going to be 4-0, just to let you know, to Scotland. Before we wrap up, Marzuno says, Keith, have you put away your big boss outfit until Valentine's Day? Is that coming back out anytime soon?
Out for a treat, yeah.
Nice one.
He's got another outfit for Valentine's Day. Don't worry about that.
I think on that note, guys, that brings us to the end of Sunday night's Hotline Live with Record.
Well, there was an interesting wee shop in Copenhagen, wasn't there, Scott? that we had to walk past a couple of times. I'm sorry, I've now conjured an image in my head which has no place being there.
And that'll be left with all the viewers as well. So there you go. You're welcome watching at home. Thank you for all the comments. As ever, we massively appreciate it. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. I think I can say, guys, from the stadium. Is that?
That's the plan, Dan. But yeah, we have to be flexible in these days. Just like Steve Clark in Scotland, we have to think on our feet.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
The plan will be from the stadium live tomorrow night, ahead of the game, and ahead of the victory that edges Scotland closer to a World Cup finals for the first time since France 98. Wow, long time ago.
Fantastic.
So long ago, Daniel, that I was actually there reporting it for the Daily Record. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Scott, Keith, it's always an absolute pleasure.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Daniel.
Have a good time in Hungary, and hope you can join us tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Cheers, mate.